We have had a panel standing by, listening in. Joining us now is reporter, RealClearPolitics reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, Politico White House reporter Tara Palmeri, as well as CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid. You're both in Washington. And Ali Noorani is in San Diego. He's the executive director of the National Immigration Forum. So I'm going to start with Paula. You've been listening in. What's your biggest takeaway?
Well, it's a lot easier to do this kind of policy change when you actually have your cabinet members in place, when you've discussed it with them, when they've been briefed and you've rolled out a plan. As I said earlier, it's clear they've learned a lot of lessons from the first travel ban. The president is the one who signs it, but the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Department of Homeland Security, they are the ones who are going to be responsible for implementing this, making sure it works, and for the Attorney General potentially defending this in court. So you see here, this time around, it seems you have these three people in place. They're on board, and there's a plan going forward. That, to me, right off the bat, is the biggest difference from what we saw the first time around.
I want to go to Ali Noorani in San Diego, Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum. Ali, Mr. Tillerson, Mr. Sessions, and John Kelly all were at pains to use the word lawful. This is a lawful use of presidential power, and yet the first time around, a similar executive order was challenged by 24 lawsuits and also pressure in the streets, protests nationwide. The changes you've learned about so far, the things you've heard this morning, does that lead you to believe that this is going to sail through the courts and that people will not be challenging it quite so strenuously?
Well, you go back to December 7th, 2015, when then candidate Trump said he was calling for a complete and total ban on Muslim immigration to the United States. We think that this is just the first step to really realize that commitment. So the intent of yes, a revised travel ban is pretty clear, and that intent is to focus on a particular religion, in this case Islam, and curtail, if not ban, as we're seeing today, immigration from these 6 countries. We do not believe that this does anything to enhance our national security. In fact, what's going to happen is that our intelligence officers across the world are going to have a much harder time developing the trust that they need to have with Muslims across the world, and our armed forces are going to be put in harm's way because, again, they will not have the relationships on the ground. I mean, at the end, these are the folks who are protecting our national security, keeping us safe, and they have to be able to say that they have the credit of the United States. And I think the message coming from the administration today is going to undermine our role in the world quite a bit moving forward.
I think quite a few people listening in today would be about as perplexed as if a repairman showed up at their house and nothing was broken. The nations on the list have not produced any major terrorists since 9/11. In fact, going back all the way to 1980, when there was a revision to the Refugee Act and there was some vetting put in place. So is there a kind of it ain't broke, what are we fixing here question that needs to be answered politically and also legally?
Well, I mean, you nailed it on, you hit the nail on the head here. I mean, these are 6 countries that seem to be picked somewhat arbitrarily. Already, if a refugee, let's say, leaves Syria today, they're going through 2 years of security vetting before they're even setting foot on the United States soil. So, I mean, this is a political ploy by the administration. And again, I think it does nothing to enhance our national security. Yes, people are scared. Yes, people are worried. So let's actually have a smart approach to these really vexing questions.
I want to ask you a quick question, Caitlin. I think one of the biggest changes here is the removal of Iraq. There was a lot of pressure to remove Iraq from the list. Can you kind of give it back?
Absolutely. You had translators, people who worked in combat with the United States, Iraq, of course, being a key ally in the fight against ISIS, were affected by the original ban. And so there was an uproar about that specifically. This is notable. The administration, though, is saying that Iraq has different vetting measures than these other countries. But really, there was concern about these key allies. What's really interesting to me here is that you heard Kelly and Tillerson use the words, we've briefed members of Congress on this already. We've had these conversations already. And I couldn't help but watch that and think, what if this was the rollout 6 weeks ago? What if this is the kind of thing that we're saying? To Paula's point, Trump didn't have his cabinet in place. And remember, the Justice Department had concerns about implementing this policy. That is certainly different here. But the rollout and the messaging, briefing lawmakers, doing the requisite communication strategy that's involved in this sort of thing, it seems like fundamentals, but this is 6 weeks in, and this is what the administration has learned. I think that's pretty notable.
Because it seems like really the biggest change other than Iraq is that they took the time to figure out the details, because some of these details, you know, this ban not impacting visa holders, this is the sort of stuff that they figured out over the rollout, over maybe 48 hours, and there was a lot of back and forth, and that's what made it such a rough rollout, is they never hammered out the details.
Right, and I still think there's some concern, though, about explaining to the American people why this is important now. Remember, at the first rollout, they didn't have some kind of cataclysmic event that sparred this kind of thing. They still don't have that now. You still have half of the country opposed to a ban in the first place. I think there's more messaging to be done, but I think if you're looking at what they've learned, this is a positive step as far as they're seeing it.
Let's go to Tara Palmeri, a Politico White House correspondent. Tara, the rollout here is clearly smoother than the last one. However, it comes in the aftermath of the announcement as a candidate, President Trump calling for a complete and total shutdown of Muslims coming to the United States. Do you think politically this newer language is enough to distance himself from that for him to get a win in Washington and nationwide?
That's a very interesting question. I think the one thing that you're seeing with this new executive order rollout compared to the last one is that there was no presence of Trump. A pool that covers the president wasn't even allowed in for a photo spray of him signing the new executive order. He's clearly taking distance from this new executive order. He had, you know, Tillerson, first time speaking, by the way, which was very interesting to see him in the spotlight, really unveiling the executive order, but you didn't see the president there. There were also no questions. And you also see a difference where they revealed the last executive order on Friday and this one on Monday, allowing for more of a news cycle. But the president is really distancing himself from
So why
this,
do you think that is? That's a really great point here. Why were there not cameras wall to wall taking a picture of President Trump solemnly signing the document and then showing it to everybody? We got none of that. Why?
Because it's an admission that the first one didn't work. Also, like you said, is this enough for his base? He promised a Muslim ban, and this is not a Muslim ban. So this might not be what Trump considers to be a win. Let's think about this. For the past 3 weeks, they've been promising since February 10th that we would see a new executive order, and we know that it was ready as of last week. But Trump wanted to capitalize on some of the political capital that he built with the speech to the joint Congress last week. It was a success, and he didn't want to ruin that with the rolling out of a contentious executive order. So they pushed it back to Monday, which also draws questions about how urgently did they really need this ban to begin with? Because last time, this ban has a 10-day phase-in period. The last ban was immediate, and senior administration officials said that they had to do it immediately because of the possibility that people could, you know, take advantage of the temporary halt between when the ban is enacted and when it's actually introduced and then enacted. So there are a lot of questions right now about where is the president and why was there a sense of urgency before and not now?
Ali, I want to ask you this question. You know, you called this a political ploy, and Caitlin pointed out that much of the country is not in favor of a ban. Certainly the officials at this press conference spent a lot of time explaining the why they're doing things, why they made certain choices. And one of the things that Jeff Sessions brought up was that he says 300 people who have come here through the refugee program are currently being investigated by the FBI. Trying to fact check that quickly, wasn't able to, but I'm wondering, you know, when you heard that, what was your reaction?
Well, I thought it was a very convenient story to be talking about today as they're trying to roll out this ban. I think that, you know, we should be making sure that the FBI is doing their job to keep the nation safe, that local law enforcement are doing their job to keep cities and towns safe. And to do that, you need to have the trust of the community that you're trying to protect. That means that, you know, whether, you know, it's a Syrian refugee who's being resettled in South Carolina or somebody who's been here for generations and is of the Muslim faith in Michigan, they want to be able to trust the FBI and local law enforcement in terms of sharing intelligence. I think the statement from the administration today undermines that trust, sends a very, very, let me put it this way. If there are 3 million Muslims in the United States right now, how much can they trust the FBI and local law enforcement? And at the end of the day, if you can't trust your source, all of us are much less safe.
Now, before we let you all go, that was a press conference without any of the conference part. No one asked any questions. They walked off the stage. They read from a piece of paper. Not the most dynamic appearance. So before we let you each go, if you have a question that you would have asked if you were standing there, let's hear it. Who should we put on the spot first? Caitlin, if you were in that room, what would you have wanted to hear from one of the three cabinet members who presented their views?
You know, something that this order doesn't address is, or the most recent U.S. attacks, right? This homegrown terrorism, radicalized American citizens. The president has not addressed that in executive order form. This obviously doesn't address that. I think the American people have a lot of questions about why these countries and why now, and what does this do to prevent the things that we've seen over the course, even just take the attacks over the course of the campaign in the United States. This doesn't address that.
Tara, White House correspondent for Politico, what about you?
My question would be about the sense of urgency. Why did they cancel the unveiling from last Wednesday and wait until Monday if there really is a crisis at hand and we needed to have that sense of urgency with the first rollout? That would be my main question. And also, where is President Trump and why isn't he standing behind this? Exactly.
Ali Noorani, how about you?
I think the question I would ask is that, what are CIA case officers? What are FBI agents? What are local police chiefs? What is their message to whether that's a Muslim source overseas or a resident of one of our cities and towns in the United States? What is the message from those law enforcement and national security experts to these important allies, whether they live here or live abroad?
All right, Paula Reid, the final word goes to you.
Well, the reason they don't have any reporters in that room isn't because of the travel ban. Those three people easily could have handled questions about that. The reason is because the President of the United States has accused his predecessor of wiretapping him, and none of them wanted to face questions, specifically the Attorney General, about that issue. But one other thing, something I've already asked the Department of Justice about, is those 300 refugees who are under investigation. That is confirmed. 300 of the 1,000 people who are currently being investigated for ISIS ties. That has been confirmed. 300 of them are refugees. But the Department of Justice will not say how many of those refugees come from the 6 countries covered by this ban.
Wow, important context right there. Very interesting. Thank you all, Paula Reid, Caitlin Huey-Burns, Ali Noorani, and Tara Palmeri. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.